Hello, everyone, and welcome to 50 Years of the Master. So, you know, I could have sworn the Master debuted, what, 10, 15 years ago, but apparently it's 50 years. And, you know, that's a little shocking to me. But we are here to talk about the Master, and potentially not just the Master per se, but also the Master and Doctor combinations. So I have many great panelists here, and I will get them to introduce themselves. Jeff, why don't I start with you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Elston. I am a lifelong Doctor Who fan, which I think means I've been watching for something like, I don't know, 30 odd years. So yeah, love the Master and all his and her incarnations. So excited to talk more about them.
Cool. Bill?
Yeah, I'm Bill Evenson, and I never know what to say on these things. I'm a guy that likes Doctor Who, and I really like the Master.
Awesome. Zecca?
Michael Zecca, well known in the Big Finish Productions office for Bandrol Empire, and that the creation of the Bandrol Emperor puppet led to Missy Puppet.
Nice. Arnold?
Well, Bill took my intro, so I run ATV Publishing, and so that's probably where a lot of people know me from, but also, there you go. Also, pretty much a lifelong Doctor Who fan. It's been quite a long time, and I've only recently become so aware of how much I truly think the Master is one of my favorite, if not my favorite character in the entire series. So appropriate for me to figure that out in the 50th anniversary, I suppose.
Cool. And my name is Stacy Smith. So I'm a writer and editor. So as well as outside in stuff, I also do my things like Who is the Doctor with Graham Burke. I wrote under Robert Smith, but I've switched to Stacey now. So yeah, who do we think is the best Master?
Wow, just go right for it.
I'm going right for it, and you can't say Golden Tipple.
Oh, shit,
Roger,
no
Caesar, Marius, Bernardi, Delgado, Torres, Castillo, Roberto.
I like him. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's good.
Well, I mean, how can you argue really with the first one? I mean, Delgado set up everything. In many respects, you could argue his performance fits that cliche of the Moriarty to the Sherlock, that kind of thing. But he was a stunning actor, and everybody is in his shadow. And basically that's just the way it works. Then you gotta put it aside and figure who's your favorite after that, because he's
right.
Yeah, he's the one.
Yeah, there's a big gulf between number one and number two, whoever that may be, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I agree totally with Arnold. I think that is the more interesting question, is who's number two, because it used to be a pretty easy question back in the up until at least 2000 something. And I think for me now, the second best is Missy, which is kind of surprising when I thought about it. I figured I'd probably give it to Ainley, but no, I'd prefer Missy to Ainley.
Well, I think Ainley, is, I mean, to your point, Arnold, Delgado set the tone. And in a lot of ways, Ainley is maybe not quite a carbon copy, but a very similar take on the character. Whereas, Missy came on the scene, deliberately sort of shrouded in secrecy a little bit. And there was this in some ways big, but in other ways very quiet reveal where, she just sort of almost whispers it to the Doctor, revealing who she is. But I think it's just such a unique take on the character, where you could see the humor, you could see the absolute callousness and disregard for anything that wasn't herself, basically. So, which is, something you could see in different iterations of the Master. So, I'd probably agree with that. I'd probably say that Missy is my second favorite. So
I've got Missy as number two as well, but I've got to say part of it for me is because of all the different actors that have played the Master since Roger Delgado. I think Michelle Gomez's performance is the closest. She plays it differently. She plays it her own way, but there are moments And this is actually how I figured her out about 3 episodes before the reveal. The end of one of the episodes in that season, she's looking at an iPad at the end and looking at clips of Clara, and the way she's talking about Clara, it was the way Roger Delgado would have done it. And I knew then. I actually posted on Twitter half an hour before the episode aired in the UK that I felt this was the truth, and I paid off. That being said, if you want to go to a number 3, I want to give some props to Derek Jacoby. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but we've actually seen him as the Master twice, because if you remember, he was also the Master to Richard E. Grant's Doctor in Scream of the Shalka. But his Professor Yana version, the War Master, as they've done him on audio now, he's an incredible actor. So just putting him in that role, there's an evil to him that is just stunning.
I don't understand why you're all against Gordon Tipple. It just doesn't make any sense.
Obviously. so I mean, I actually think that obviously Delgado was such a a sort of a titan of an actor and stuff like that. But I think actually most of the Masters really, to me, feel much more like Anthony Ainley in the sense of like, Anthony set the tone of the Master as like kind of like someone who's just kind of bananas, and that's really the tone they go for. Whereas the Delgado Master was much more suave and sophisticated. And although you see aspects of that, I think the core of the Master these days is understood as to be this kind of psychopath. Maybe a bit less with Missy, perhaps in the later appearances, but
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. Anthony Ainley was the Snidely Whiplash of Masters, really. That's the Dudley Do Right reference for those who don't get it. Excuse me. But yeah, you're right. The Master has been portrayed in many cases as just, excuse me, off the deep end. You really see that with John Sim.
Yeah,
he is really crazy in the Tennant era. Actually, when they brought him back in the Capaldi era, he was a little more toned down. Sasha Dewan again is just off the rails,
just out there. Yeah.
Although I feel like Sasha Dewan and John Sim have a thing where John Sim's Master seemed kind of broken because of having spent all that time as Derek Jacoby under wraps, and Sasha Dewan's Master is broken for a different reason, because the whole timeless child thing that I just spent an hour talking about.
Yeah. Well, Arnold, you wrote a piece for the Outside In actually about the Master and appearing in Utopia, and that for you, because for you, I remember you saying like this is the moment where you sort of realized that these 2 incarnations of the show are really the same.
Yeah, it was one of the things I loved putting together, because I wrote about Sound of Drums, Last of the Time Lords, right? It's that end bit where Tennant is revitalized and Sim backs away and is screaming no, 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 and he's curled up in a ball on the floor at the wall. And it was in that moment, the first time I saw that, where I thought, oh my God, that's Delgado with the Keller machine in The Mind of Evil, where he's looking up at the Doctor looking down at him, except that the flip to me for that just made everything perfect was, it wasn't that the Doctor was towering over him menacingly like, I'm going to defeat you. It was him saying, I'm going to forgive you. But it felt like there was the connection between all those years of that relationship. And I have to say, Dewan is definitely like in the mold of the new era where the Master is an unhinged psychopath. I love his performance, but I do think that his byplay with Whittaker in a few of those scenes felt closer to me to Delgado and Pertwee's relationship than almost anything we'd seen since then. I think actually what I'm thinking most of all is their conversation. What is it? I can't remember now. Is it on the Eiffel Tower? I think where they're talking. They're up there like on the yeah, and that back and forth with them felt a bit like I could see those two being the same two that I remember from the original, from the 70s. It's like that's them again.
I do get some of that with Michelle Gomez and Peter Capaldi.
I agree.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's just where I feel their relationship resonates the best, is when it comes back to less of the Master and Missy being crazy and more of them being contemporaries that really respect and love one another and are playing a game.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like the gods fighting down on Earth, right? So they're operating on a level that's not ours, and yet they have got this personal vendetta that we are kind of caught in the wake of.
Yeah.
Well, and I think something I see in the performance with Roger Delgado and John Pertwee, and again with Michelle Gomez and Capaldi, goes back to some of Barry Lutz's concept in there that they might have played out had Roger Delgado survived till John Pertwee's final story, which was the idea was the master might have been the Doctor's brother, you know, and all this. And if you think about like a younger brother, the master is the younger brother, the Doctor is the older brother, and the younger brother constantly trying to get the older brother's attention and respect, but never quite doing it right. That there's a certain amount of that I see in the Delgado relationship. And again, with Michelle Gomez, she's trying to come back to that. It's like, I miss my friend, you know. She says that a few times, I want my friend back. And they've traveled down different roads, and she doesn't know how to win him back, and she makes mistakes and does it the wrong way.
So that's all she knows how to do. You know, that's you know, it's like, you know, your cat brings you a dead mouse, because to a cat they're like, well, this is what you want. Like, this is what I would want. So that's what I'm giving you. So, you know, Missy's like, here's an army. Have fun. Like, this is great, isn't it? But it's not. That's not what the Doctor needs. And I think that, you know, to your point, Arnold, the it's those more quiet, like, conversational moments that for me at least take me back to the Delgado Pertwee relationship, because that's how it was set up. You know, he was in every story of season 8, and then, you know, a good few times after that. And that's a lot of the nature of their relationship. Whereas you didn't really get that with Ainley so much. You didn't get that with well, you didn't get that with Gordon Tipple, obviously. You certainly didn't get it with Eric Roberts. But that sort of, again, harkens back to like the relationship that is, you know, that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, because that's how long they've known each other. So it is good to see that. And it's, you know, I never really, even now, I remember at the time, and looking back now, I still have never cared for the John Sim characterization, because it's so far, like, it's such a, I don't even want to say it's a left turn, because it is probably a natural progression. And I think the way that you described it, Michael, of you know, being stuck as you know, someone that he wasn't for who knows how long, I could see how then the reaction to that when he regenerates is like, I'm completely bananas. And especially in the end of time, I was like, what is this characterization? Like, what is happening? And so I have really appreciated the John Sim Master, but I did appreciate him a bit when he came back at the end of the Capaldi era. So I'm glad that in some ways, in my eyes, he was, I don't know if I'd say redeemed, but at least I appreciated him more at that point than I had in his previous appearances with Tennant.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the more regular kind of master there. I love this idea of like the dead mouse offering. It's like, oh, here's a dead Osgood that I brought you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like,
well, even if
yeah,
we...
Bill, I wanted to ask, what's your favorite like kind of Doctor Master pairing? Because you said Missy, but is it Missy with Peter Capaldi, or does it change by Doctor if you add them in?
What, you mean like I can make up my own? Because
Sure.
that would be kind of fun.
Well, you know, certainly I think Delgado is a great master, but I don't know if I'd necessarily say Pertwee and Delgado are necessarily my favorite combination.
Well, okay, as soon as you asked the question, that was the first thing that came into my mind. It was. And I think partly because of what you were talking about, Michael, about that relationship where the master's as a brother always trying to get the Doctor's attention. There's something that doesn't fit for me there. Like, Delgado is doing that, but he doesn't come across as desperate. He's doing it because that's just what he wants to do. He couldn't imagine anything better than messing with the Doctor all the time.
I feel the desperation really comes in with Michelle Gomez, that it's at a later point in the relationship and she's desperate to get him back.
It's also worth noting something that I've come to realize more from watching some of these with Natalie the first time seeing some of them, that I never saw the relationship quite that way. In some respects, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but in many ways, watching their relationship shows you how you can see the Doctor in a much worse light, a darker light. And again, that's what I mean. I don't mean a bad way. She is always our hero in a certain respect in the story, but it's still an alien being that you're dealing with, someone who is fascinated with humanity or enamored with humanity, but detached from it. And I remember her reaction was, we were watching The Last of the Time Lords, that whole arc, which I still love. And when it got to the end and Tennant is like cradling him and saying regenerate and crying, she was reacting to that like, I can't get behind this idea that he's letting this mass murdering psychopath be someone he cares more about than the people he supposedly protects. And I'm thinking back to times where like Delgado would get away and Pertwee would end an episode very old school TV style. Like, I'm rather looking forward to this day. He murders people, you know? But on a certain level, neither one of them care about that. They're really both in a relationship that is above all that. The Doctor's playing at being a hero, maybe in the same way that the Master sometimes is playing at being a villain.
You're the puppy.
That's how I sometimes see that.
I mean, really, you're the puppy. That line from Michelle Gomez, that described it well.
Yeah.
Talking about where Clara fits in. That's something I think I also like about both Roger Delgado and Michelle Gomez's relationship with not just the Doctor, but with the companions. Roger Delgado and Katie Manning had interesting relationship. And Michelle Gomez, it's a different relationship, but she's got a disdain for Jenna Coleman's Clara. And
and I like that.
Loves
I like
to
the continuity of that.
Put her down.
And I like, you know, it, in my mind, a little bit of a callback to Ainley's Master with Perry. And he's like, you could have saved me last time and you didn't. So, you know what I mean? Like not forgetting that. Whereas I think with Missy and Clara, I just think she doesn't like Clara, which is fine. Like, but I think again,
like the TARDIS, she doesn't like Clara.
Right, exactly, right. And you know, just sort of recognizing, I think, you know, narratively the role that the companions play, and that of course, you know, the Master is going to have some sort of interaction, relationship, whatever, with the people who are with the Doctor because they're with the Doctor, and you'd think by default, either. I think it honestly might come down, especially with Missy, like just jealousy. Like, you know, I want the Doctor in some way. You know, I want the Doctor dead. I want the Doctor to be my friend or whatever. Exactly, and you're in the way of that. So I will happily shrink you down to size, literally, to get you out of the way.
Well, and I love the moment in Frontier in Space where, like, you know, Jo discovers the Master and she's like so happy to see him. She's like, oh, thank God, it's like familiar face. Hooray.
Oh, there's so much great stuff in Frontier in Space with them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the rapport is amazing.
She's so proud of herself for being able to resist his hypnotism in that, because she's like, I've learned, I know how you operate now, mister. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, she's just so, she just goes for it. And she's like, you're not gonna, this isn't gonna work on me anymore, mister. So I appreciate the interplay between them. That, like, I couldn't see that same interplay happening with Ainley's Master, for example. Really, maybe a little bit with Missy, but not really with any other incarnation. I
mean, you know, Tegan, basically the first thing she says to him is like, "You revolting man!" Like she just like, goes at him,
which is so. I love Tegan, and that's so not Tegan to say you revolting man. She would have, you know, chucked a shoe at him or something. But she wouldn't have said that. Like that still doesn't quite sit right with me.
The thing about Ainley's Master too is how much missed opportunity there was that I don't think is really something you can blame anybody at the time for. It's more a case of if only television was the way television is now. So, like for instance, the whole setup of him taking Treemass's body and Nissa being a current companion whose father's face is being worn by this monster. Imagine the emotional character arc you'd get out of a season of that on a show today. Whereas back then it was just like, oh, my planet's gone, my father's gone. And like they tried, but they don't really, they didn't do that then.
And well, especially with Nissa being almost an afterthought, right? Nissa joined. They had to write her in, so that's it. It's a really missed opportunity there.
But it shows the. I think that's a really good example, Arnold. Like it shows how horrific the Master can be, because the Master's like, well, I need to live. I've got these powers hanging around from the keeper ship. Here's a body. You touch the clock, so it's you. You know what I mean? Like, and without a second thought, absorbs him. And then, you know, again, the thought of like this, and how does Nissa say it? Like the creature that murdered my father, or something like that. Like to see that in front of you, knowing that he's literally wearing your father's body, is absolutely revolting, but so what the Master would do.
Well, I was going to say also, when we talk about companion relationships, if you look at Derek Jacoby as Professor Yana, and then as the Master minutes later, the way he turns on his assistant, you know, and as he's regenerating into John Sim, you know, he's just disgusted by the idea of that he's been taken down by not only this insectoid, you know, creature, but a girl too. It's like he's got this like I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm thinking he is being sexist in that moment.
Right.
You know, he's like, the doctor should have been the one taking me out, not this little petty thing.
Well, I think when you see like in Castrovalva, right, like you know,
Mhm.
like I mean, it's Shadavan, he's really upset. He's like, what are all these women doing here? Is it a holiday? Right? And you're like, okay, well, whose inbuilt sexism is that? Is it the masters
Right,
or
yeah.
Edric's?
Or the writers.
It's hard to narrow that down, but yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Going back to something you guys said earlier too about like Anthony Ainley and then spawning the modern era masters all being kind of unhinged psychopaths. You know, on audio, Big Finish has created some other incarnations of the master, and the one I'm really thinking about right now is Alex McQueen. I really enjoy Alex McQueen's performance. He kind of fits in the 7th, 8th Doctor era a little bit on the audios, but he is just as unhinged as John Sim for no real good reason. So
I just started listening to Masterful, but I haven't finished it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I find myself, it's difficult. I used to listen to Big Finish when they first started, and then I never was able to keep up with all of it. And I've tried to dip back in from time to time. And every time something new and incredible happens, like we got Tom Baker, we got David Tennant, now it's going to be Eccleston. It's like, well, I gotta come back and listen. But I've never been able to get really back into it. But I'm trying to listen to Masterful, and so far it's been interesting because I'm not familiar with McQueen, and it was interesting. He's in there. But it also, I think that's an interesting project of throwing into sharper relief how samey some of it can get sometimes with some of them. And there's a distinction with a few of them, but particularly in the modern era, there seems to have been one accepted approach that, like, this is pretty much the unhinged thing that we keep talking about is what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the
somewhere
face-off
in the
I want to
middle.
see. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Bill. Go.
No, I was just going to say somewhere in the middle between the new series and the old series is Eric Roberts' performance.
Yeah,
well, that's
a nice little bridge, to be honest.
Eric Roberts has come back and done some Big Finish work recently, and his master performance for Big Finish has been much more subtle and Delgado-like than anything he did in that television episode.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he was definitely the archetype of the unhinged psychopath in the TV movie.
Well, the craft services are probably a little different between the time of the
I would imagine.
Yeah. But I heard a little bit of him in this new one. And it was very nice to hear him again. It's odd when you develop nostalgia for things where at the time you think, oh, this, is the thing that sits outside. Now I think, oh, that's great. Bring Eric Roberts back in. Let's see what he can do. And it's a very nice element to the whole thing. He's doing a great job.
Well, I mean, we're Doctor Who fans, right? So we love multi-Doctor stories. So of course we're gonna love multi-Master stories in the same way that we're like Daleks plus Cybermen plus the Board against 3 of the Doctor. That's just the way we're wired. So I can see how that would be. And the TV movie was 1996. I mean, that was a lot of years ago at this point. So it's easy to feel a little bit of.
And let's face it, it was produced for Fox.
Well, that too, yeah.
So there was a different taste to it there too.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's not harming the ongoing story of Doctor Who makes it much easier to mind. Not mind, really. You're like, okay, well, that was just this weird thing that happened in the 90s, rather than like, well, this is what Doctor Who is now. That's a scarier thing. Yeah. So we have a question. So the question was, is the Time Meddler another Time Lord and not the Master?
I remember years ago, you guys remember how you pronounce it? Was it FASA, that company that did the role-playing game?
Yeah. I have it on my shelf over here, Arnold, yes.
Okay, and I remember buying all that stuff because I was reading everything and reading their master book where they definitively stated that the monk was the master and the
the war chief,
and all that. And it's like, and at the time I kind of fell in love with the idea. It's like, wow, everything fits together. But now it's like, nah, I don't think so.
God. I always thought it was a horrible idea.
Yeah.
Is it the Timeless Master? Is it?
Yeah, people seem to really get into that idea.
Maybe that's yet to come. When you think about I mean, there's actually not a bad case for that. When you think about we haven't even touched on Peter Pratt or Jeffrey Beavers, but when we meet the decayed master in The Deadly Assassin, he's at the end of his regeneration cycle, which why? Has he burnt lives up? Is he older than we think? Did he similar to what happened in Planet of Fire, through his experiments and testing, whatever, did he accidentally zap himself a few times and so he had to burn up lives that way?
If you go back to that FASA manual that Arnold was talking about, they were suggesting that he kind of burned through regenerations as disguises.
Yeah, that's another theory.
Yeah, so like in the mind of evil, he's like regenerating, like when he's at telephone
and then
operator,
literally pulling his
every single time he's doing that.
And he has to go back again, or let's use up another one.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Like he just keeps going back and forth. So
I totally want to see the fan debate that's just titled Beavers versus Pratt. Like, I mean, this is hilarious. This is comedy gold. So, I mean, these are 2 swear words in the UK, right?
You're right. It writes itself. I mean, for what it's worth, I like them both. Like, I think they both have I would say pluses and minuses visually. You know, one has ping pong eyes, one has teeth painted on the lips. They both have a really cool decayed cloak. You know, they both have different types of grandfather clocks as TARDISes. Jeffrey Beavers has this wonderful, well, they both do. They have these wonderful voices that are so well suited. Particularly in, I would say, Keeper of Traken, because you're hearing, you know, you don't know who it is, and you're hearing it through a statue for a lot of the story. So, but it was an interesting way to deal with, bridge the gap, as it were, between, you know, Delgado has died, so he can't return to the role. We want to bring this character back, so how do we do it? Let's make him a faceless monster, you know, quite literally, and then have him work through other people until he can get a body, which I have no idea if that was ever the plan with the Deadly Assassin. But obviously they intended for him to come back because he got away at the end of it. Spoiler alert.
I remember how I felt when I was watching all this stuff, like the first couple times through, maybe in the 80s and early 90s. And it's been so long since I've seen either The Deadly Assassin or Keeper of Traken, really, that I don't really know what I'd think now. But I just know that when I watched them then, I had so much trouble. I basically couldn't really conceive that's the same person I'm seeing that's supposed to have been Delgado. If it went right to like an Ainley type of persona, maybe it would have been easier initially for me. But I was like, I could never believe that Peter Pratt is the same guy who was being all suave and doing sword fights with Pertwee and everything. And now in retrospect, looking back, they're a fascinating take on the character. And it goes back to that desperation we were talking about.
Yes.
There is the most physical representation of that character's desperation put out into the surface that I think then informed a lot of stuff that came after, for good and bad probably. But that's I think where they get a lot of that.
Arnold, I think you bring up a good point there too, that for a lot of us Americans that are of this age, our first encounter with the Master was Peter Pratt, and then Jeffrey Beavers, and then we filled Roger Delgado in later.
That's good.
So we really didn't know the history of this character and how they connected.
I think too, like,
interesting with that layer.
Like I feel like, you know, if I was burnt to a crisp, like I might be a little less suave as well. You know, it's like,
true. Yeah.
Like, you know, I might not look so similar to, you know, how I acted before.
Might not look the same smoking a cigar.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. It's like, damn it, I shouldn't have smoked that cigar.
I was going to say, I think, learn the lesson after smoking the cigar.
Yeah. So we have a question. Something else to consider is having a single master across several doctors, say with Anthony Ainley, versus a master tied with roughly a single doctor, like Messier and Capaldi, and basically Sim with Tennant. Is it better or worse?
Well, see, here's the thing. I don't think you should never hold the like production storytelling to any kind of rigid rules. But one thing I kind of fell in love with as an idea for a while, I don't know how much I still believe in it, but is that idea that you match the master works best when it is a sort of dark reflection of the current doctor that master is dealing with. That it's a good way to, against the Holmes Moriarty kind of thing, but like it works well that way. And I remember earlier we were talking about how many people didn't like the Sim version, but you can argue that is a very clear application of that. If like Delgado is the dark version of Pertwee, the urbane English gentleman who's enjoying cheese sandwiches and the cucumber sandwich and the cigars, here's the young guy in the skinny suit who's kind of crazy and dances around a lot, and he's Dark Tennant the way, you know, Delgado. And then if you carry that forward, you could make an argument for them in various psychological ways. I'm sure, you know, you could write whole things about that there are different aspects of that. Ainley arguably is the one that really doesn't work because he's just a Delgado like pantomime version mapped onto several doctors and never really gets to be a counterpoint to any one of them.
I think the counterpoint is in Survival. I think he does work there. And actually, he's a remarkable counterpoint to the Seventh Doctor, I think.
To the Seventh?
And I think particularly because
but not so much
Doctor
with 5 and 6.
Yeah, not so much with 5 and 6, but the Seventh Doctor is all intellect, right? He's all plotting and planning all the time. And in survival, the Master is all like, you know, kind of raw, like, you know, anger and stuff like that. And yet it's tamped down, and he's plotting and planning as well. So it's funny because it's obviously
maybe that's why
maybe
that's why survival is like his best moment.
It's clearly best story. Yeah, exactly. And also he underplayed.
Maybe that's why we had Michael Jason to counterpoint Colin Baker rather than Anthony Ainley.
I think you're right. I think that's a better counterpoint. Yeah. Even though it's basically the same character, but yeah.
But that would have been too obvious. If the Master, if he had showed up at his trial and the Master was, you know, the prosecutor against him.
Yeah.
That would pop up at the end.
Yeah, like in the 5 Doctors, like, you know, Terrence Dix is like, you know, like, oh, let's make it the Master. And he's like, that's just going to be too obvious to everyone. So let's make the Master a good guy in this one. And like, you know, when Terrence Dix is realizing it's too much of a cliche, you know, you're in dangerous territory.
That's true. That's true. So instead he takes the nicest, you know, oldest Time Lord and then makes him, you know.
Yeah, it's brilliant, right? Because you're not expecting that at all. Right?
No, not at all. No, that's very true. I do think as we... Oh, sorry. I was just going to say real quick, as we were talking about like the sort of survival characteristics, like as I sit here thinking about it and listen to everybody, like that shows up sort of time and again, really starting with the Pratt Master, like he's in survival mode there. He's in literal survival mode in Keeper of Traken because he needs a new body. And then you look through, you know, with the 5 Doctors, he's given a new regeneration cycle. With Planet of Fire, he's dealing with numismaton gas to, you know, he's shrunk himself down.
All the way through to Eric Roberts, really.
Really, yeah, totally. I was just going to say, yeah, like when you survival, and you mentioned it, Stacey, like he's absolutely in it's sort of like this base instinct mode, and he needs really in that case sort of help to get out. You know, we see him trying to break into the TARDIS at the end because he clearly has no other means of escape. And then right up to the TV movie, he's literally a pile of goo that is so set on living that he gets out of his casket and wrecks the TARDIS to make him land, to find a body, to possess. Like it's bonkers what he will go to survive. And that really, you know, has been, I feel like that's the sort of the strongest when you think about a through line. Like, yes, Ainley was with different doctors, but it was all in the same production era. It was all under the same showrunner, as it were. And he really had that same thread carrying him through, which I'd never really thought about until just now. But I think that's as I look back on it, I think that's actually kind of, and I'm sure it wasn't deliberate, but I think that it works well as you look at sort of the Ainley era of the character.
He really does shine in survival. That really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if it's just for the outfit, like even if they finally got him out of that stupid
makes a huge difference.
Black velvet, whatever.
Puffy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Just and that collar, but it serves him much better. Like it honestly, with me at least, helps me take him a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
I wanted to come back to the question that we had and just flip it a little bit. So one thing we've considered here too, I mean, from a production standpoint, you are having a particular actor with a particular doctor at different stages in the run of the show, but there's no reason when they both have time machines that can travel through anywhere through time and space that they should interact with each other in order. We've seen with River's song that the Doctor does not have to interact with her in order. There's no reason that Michelle Gomez couldn't be running into Patrick Troughton and so on. I mean,
they don't.
Big finish, save us.
Right. I mean, essentially that, like, you know, the John Sim Master does turn up with Peter Capaldi, so you do have a little bit of it. But I think the whole, you know, the problem is that first conversation is like, oh, so you escaped from Zerafas, and you're like, well, what's that? You know, it's like, wait, didn't you? Like, oh, okay, sorry. Like, let's avoid those conversations, I guess. Bill, I wanted to ask you, why did the Master adopt the Khalid disguise in Time Flight when no one was watching him?
This is you just turned us right off the rails. You just want to see how far I can go with it. Because here's what it is. Because he ran out of anagrams for Master, and so he found one that was almost an anagram for Dalek. Is that the answer you were looking for?
It's original.
Yes.
It's a very Bill answer.
His study of the history of Skara revealed that the Khalid people were Chinese stereotypes. Yeah, that's.
There you go.
Yeah.
Time Flight.
Good old Time Flight. You'd never let us down.
Never. I mean,
the green glue that comes out of him in that part too, and just
yes.
Oh, that's right.
He's wearing.
Okay, so we have another question, or I guess more comment. That Ninja Cat says, I like thinking that the child that the timeless child was playing with when they fell and died the first time was actually the master, and his memories have been hidden too.
Yeah, I'm going with that.
I'm with that too.
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I still am not letting go of the brother thing. I'm sorry. I've always loved the idea that
there's nothing here that stops that. That could have been an adoptive brother.
Yeah. I still think that ultimately, say what you want about cliches. Cliches are cliches sometimes because they work. I still love that idea. I like that that's the relationship. I always loved the Smith and Jones line where the doctor just kind of, says that he had the brother and they mention that, or they mention relative. And then later, and, he says, you've been watching too much television or whatever that bit. But I feel I was just like to get that out of the way. But I feel in a way that I'm not going to let it go because like reverse psychology, I feel like that was just confirmation for me that that's true because he's trying to get rid of that. And I just think it works. But of course, the beauty of it is you don't have to believe that either. It can be whatever you want it to be until somebody nails it down.
Well, I was just going to say that's the problem with this show that's lasted for so many years is you get too many answers. So that's one of the few things that they haven't specifically spelled out yet, unless you do take that as an answer in that episode you're talking about.
Well, I'm thinking of the different orders. I'd love to know what people think about, and I haven't rewatched it enough to confirm this, but there was nothing that for sure told us that the Dewan Master followed directly from Missy, right?
No. Right. There were questions on where he fits in.
There were just a couple of sly references. He made a joke that sounded like he was making a Wicked Witch kind of joke that might be referring to her, but no, not really.
Yeah. But the Master could have had many female incarnations even before Delgado. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and where do people think that Dewan? Do we think Dewan fits just sort of right after Missy? Does he just slot? He's just the next because that's who we saw before Dewan.
Or is he?
Or
is he really Joe Martin's master?
So well. If Missy is the last master, the arc is beautiful, right? So the problem is you kind of have to go like, oh, so Missy in the end learned nothing. All right, okay, let's just forget about that. So
that is a problem.
It would be great to actually situate the Dewan Master before that, because then you have a much more sort of nicer evolution of the character, I guess.
Yeah. Well, to your point, Arnold, like you could argue that how to your point, Stacey, the Master didn't learn anything at the end. Like, so is that it's absolutely a cliche, but does it fit this character? It kind of does. Like, could you see that that's how this character ends? Literally killing themselves, sort of. Like, yeah, you could. Like, that's not surprising to me in the slightest. So in that way, I think that a cliche could absolutely work.
Let's make a supposition that Dewan is following Missy, though. The point we're coming in with Dewan is after he's discovered the truth about the Doctor's past, the whole timeless child thing. He was broken by this, and he feels betrayed by this.
Yeah.
This friendship with the Doctor now feels like a huge betrayal. And all the things he learned as Missy might be out the window because of this.
Oh, I got an idea. So the Time Lords in the past capture the Dewan Master and send him for trial, and then he falls into the telemovie like TARDIS, and then he gets burned to a crisp, becomes the Peter Pratt Master. It's perfect.
It all fits. The last puzzle piece is in place. Okay, so then what's the difference between Peter Pratt and Jeffrey Beavers? Because they look different. So is that just sort of continuing decay?
I always figured the difference there is right there in the stories, in the sense that supposedly he got enough energy at the end of Deadly Assassin that he was able to rejuvenate himself a little bit.
Okay.
That's why he looks like that.
Yeah. I can totally buy that. Yep.
Yeah.
I can totally buy that. This all fits together, just like signed, sealed, delivered. Stacey, sell that script or that book or that whatever medium.
The Master. Okay, now let's do Dalek continuity.
Oh, yay, I love it. And then
you don't have that much time.
Yeah, Unitarian, definitely.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat which says, what if a future Doctor tricks a past Master into saving Adric, which is how the Davison era Master knew about Adric's block transfer abilities?
That's interesting.
Well, wait, if the Master saves Adric, does that mean the dinosaurs didn't die in the KT extinction and now Earth is very different and invasion of the dinosaurs is basically real?
Well, I think sure. Dinosaurs on a spaceship proves that the dinosaurs didn't all go extinct. So
well, and we know from the King's Demons that the Master likes to meddle and on his scale, you know, piddly little thing. So
Yeah.
not killing the dinosaurs would feel very little.
Matt Smith did tell us that time can be rewritten. So
Yeah.
Actually, I think if the Master really wants to piss off the Doctor, I mean, just bringing Adric back is probably a surefire way to do it.
Right. He's like, no, I told my companions at the time it was not possible to save him. It was not possible. No, it was not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that too. Let's make it happen. So many ideas generating here.
Matthew
Big finish.
That's fine.
Somebody else asked, well, what if the Master ends up being a clone?
Of whom?
I mean,
Of who?
Of the Doctor?
Of the Doctor.
Of the Doctor, yeah.
Or maybe of an earlier Master.
Of the Master.
Yeah.
You can see, I could absolutely see a scenario in which the Master survival instinct is so strong that there's some, just like we saw in the recent New Year's special, there's a whole factory of Master clones, and they just sort of come out as needed, like, because he's like, then I never die.
I will say that one of the things I love the most about what was it called, Spyfall, was the reveal for the Master was one of those kind of things that we spend time talking about year after year on message boards and like never quite ever get, like that idea of like, wouldn't it be cool if the character that's been there the whole time in the story is actually, and we didn't get like a whole season, like people have been saying that for years, you know, there's remember the whole Eccleston thing, he's going to turn out to be the Master at the end.
Kind of did that with Michelle Gomez, but not completely.
Yeah, a little bit. And that idea that you can have that reveal after you've gotten the audience to feel that this is an endearing character, something like that. Beautiful setup for something like that. And imagine if you did that in a more elaborate way. And you can also have the thing like, suppose there's like a Master is there is obvious, but then another one who isn't also a part of the story. And you figure you've already got the reveal at this point because there's the Master, but nope.
Right.
There's so many opportunities for those kind of things, but then a lot of it I think just comes down to the reality of production. Like how long to keep something secret, you know, that kind of thing I think limits.
Oh, so Yaz was the Master all along.
No, Yaz is the Ronnie.
Yes.
Actually, the one you make me think. The one you made me think of though, Arnold, is the Derek Jacoby Master because I feel like we missed out on getting more with him. And if I was a big Finnish listener, I there's plenty, I guess. But now you make me wish that we just had him around for a whole season as that sweet old Professor Yana, and then watch him completely turn.
Oh, that would actually be really good. Because especially, you know, even if it was like maybe he was a companion of the Doctor, or you know, an associate, you know, someone who pops in and out, like, you know, a Mickey Smith or something like that. So that could have been really cool. To your point, Michael, like you sort of got that with Missy. But you know, just in these little blips, you know, these little epilogues, and
it wasn't really full-fledged story like we were talking
she's not
about
integrated into the characters.
Right. She was clearly playing some kind of long game, as we, you know, later.
She was clearly the villain for the season, but we didn't know who she really was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna play devil's advocate on this question, and instead of saying a clone, what if Sasha Dhawan's Master is just Chameleon?
Well, I mean, another chameleon, because we did see the definitive end of Chameleon at the end of it.
Could be a whole bunch of them. There could be a whole planet of them out there for all we know.
Well, maybe Sasha Dhawan's Master comes before the King's Demons, and you know.
Yeah,
that's true. Were there any
how convoluted could Stacey make this timeline?
I've got to put Doctor Who in order. Damn it.
Yeah, you're absolutely. Yep. I look forward to it.
I've got a mathematical formula and I'm not afraid to use it.
That's true. That's right. If anyone can apply mathematics to putting Doctor Who in order, especially the Master's timeline or unit dating, it would be you.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, Eric Gilbranson points out there was a Master clone plotline in the novel Harvest of Time. Yeah, that's true. I have read that book, and yeah, I vaguely do remember there was a clone plotline.
What is the oh shoot, you already said it. Shelka Master. It's just a robot with
it's a robot with the Doctor with the Master's like soul consciousness inside of it, and it's tethered to the TARDIS. He actually can't leave.
He can't leave the TARDIS. Yeah, so he's
I get this feeling that sort of like they're thinking beyond what happened at the end of the TV movie.
Yes.
Like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 I mean, what I
Very
love
cool
about it
idea.
is it kind of makes the Master into the Doctor's companion.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the
Mm.
end of the last of the Time Lords if he actually had regenerated and they travel together. You know,
Yeah.
and it's basically like what's suggested there. And I think he's so, I remember seeing that and being like so wowed by this idea. I was like, oh my God, like the Master is not the villain here. And yet, you know, like he does what the Master does best, which is like just be really snarky to the Doctor all the time. I was like, this is genius. Like,
And he
I
still
think
gets
I
up
would be
to
really cool
no good within the limits and boundaries that have been put onto him. If you
Yeah.
Shaka story,
Well, and
he
that
does
was,
try
you know,
to manipulate things a little bit from inside the TARDIS.
right. And when you think about sort of, you know, continuity and canon and all those things, like that was, you know, from the BBC. That was not just like some throwaway random fan-made thing.
Yeah.
So you could absolutely, now again, Stacey, figure out with your equation, like where does that Master fit in? But I guess if it's a consciousness in an android, it could fit in anywhere.
It's the chameleon Master after Planet of
Yes.
Fire. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. It all fits together.
And as I mentioned earlier, Big Finish has also had a parallel universe Master and Doctor come into play in Mark Gatiss.
Yeah.
And David Warner as the Doctor.
Mhm.
And Mark Gatiss's Master is more subtle and suave, like Roger Delgado's Master. He is more in that vein than in the modern Anthony Lee twirling mustache vein.
Oh, is he? I haven't heard any of the like Arnold. I love Big Finish in its early years, but I just have never been able to keep up with
literally in Sympathy for the Devil, that very first David Warner story, Mark Gatiss's Master, he really feels like an alternate Roger Delgado.
Yeah.
In that universe.
That I do remember. I listened to that. Yeah.
That's the Unbound, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that I've heard, but I don't remember Gatiss being in it, so I'll have to go back and listen
to
that.
Yeah. Well, he's credited as Sam Giscard.
Right.
Gatiss's Master comes back in this new Masterful too.
Right.
Yeah. A little bit. But yeah.
So do you think we need to bring back the more suave idea of the Master?
I would really like to. You know, I liked a lot of John Sim. I probably liked it a little more than some of you. I agree. End of Time, I never quite understood what the hell they were doing with that. But
laser beams out of the hands. Woo! Like
I love the whole Utopia to Last of the Time Lord story, and that there's so much about that I love. But I would love to see the Master dialed down a few notches and see a more, you want to say Delgado-esque, but like a more sensible version of a manipulator and a villain who is trying to achieve a goal, not simply just because they're crazy, and see what that relationship would be like. I feel that very often we don't get the opportunity to stop and have these characters relate to one another. It's one of the reasons why I thought Dewan and Whitaker were actually really good. There was quite a bit of byplay between the two of them that gave them at least a little time to show that there's a history and that they could talk to one another. Yeah. And I'd like to see more of that. I think it makes it more compelling.
You know? Yeah, basically it's when Dewan has his calmer moments where we really see that.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like
and when you think about he was playing, obviously, again, you know, as the Master is wont to do, like sort of playing this long game, you know, taking over the life and literally carrying, you know, him in a matchbox in his pocket. Which, so again, you've got both sides. You've got the complete bonkersness. Who shrinks someone down and carries them in a matchbox in their breast pocket, while maintaining a completely, you know, hey, yes, I am this person, and you know, so obviously it's there with Dewan's character, and I really liked what he did with it, and I would love to see more of that. So I don't, I mean, there's been a lot of Masters. Obviously, there's been a lot of Doctors as well, but I'd love to see, back to the question earlier of one Master who goes through, you know, multiple Doctors. Like, I don't think we have to have that, but I would love to see more of Dewan, and whether that's with, you know, Whitaker and Who's to Come, or, you know, maybe he goes away for a while and then comes back with the 14th or 15th Doctor. Great. I would just love to see more of that characterization of the Master.
Yeah, I mean, I think the suaver Master, it makes the moments of, like, you know, intensity much more intense, right? Because it's like, you know, if he's kind of ranting and railing at every single opportunity, you're like, okay, that's just how he talks. Whereas, you know, like the Delgado Master, when he gets, you know, when he's on the floor, like Arnold said at the beginning, like, you know, and that Doctor's laughing over him, he's having this moment, like it's really powerful because he doesn't usually do that. So, you know, like I think this idea, like I mean, Missy had it a little bit. I think like Missy, you know, kind of, especially when she kills Osgood in you know, and she's kind of like, she seems like this kind of like, oh, she's just kind of like, you know, being snarky a lot kind of thing. And then she does something really nasty and you're like, oh, right, this is a really dangerous person. Like, you know, it makes that moment more shocking because it's not happening at every second.
I think we did get a little bit of that in Spyfall. There's a moment in the Vore fellows' house when they're at the casino party where Dewan and Yaz are chatting at a table, you know, playing games and chatting where they're kind of a little bit friendly with each other, but what he's saying also seems just a little bit twisted out of sync, and then that kind of
like
pays off later when the reveal comes.
Yes, like it's like a caricature almost. Like this is what people expect from a person, from like a human, right? Like, yeah, this is what I'll do. Like because he's not human, and so he could easily mess that up. And even when Delgado did it, it was for, you know, short stints. You know, pull the mask off and, oh, hey, it's me. And same with Ainley. Like, I'm a scarecrow. I'm Khalid. I'm, you know, it's these moments where, and then it doesn't.
Wait a minute, how long was he out in the field as the scarecrow anyway? What the hell was that?
Really good. I don't know. Like, I love that story for the Ronnie because Kate O'Mara is a joy to watch, and then, you know, the Master's just sort of shoehorned into that story. So that's a whole
she really takes
but
it apart. It's great.
Absolutely, absolutely, she does. She puts him in his place. Yeah, and I love that.
Cool. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left. So let's maybe give our closing thoughts, and let's go back to actually Bill's idea earlier of like, if you could match the Master with any Doctor, so any Master, any Doctor, what's your ideal Master-Doctor combination?
You know, I wonder if Missy and Tom Baker combination would be too much, you know, but I'd still like to see it. Big Finish could make that happen, I suppose.
Yep.
I mean, you wouldn't even need any other actors in the story.
That's right.
Okay, I'm going to bring two to the table. First of all, I think the word play that would happen between Roger Delgado and Colin Baker would break most of our thesauruses. And I have a feeling that Alex McQueen's craziness might be a nice counterpoint to Troughton.
That's interesting. I'm just gonna. I have a hard time figuring what that would be like, but I guess it'd be kind of interesting to see how Delgado would have related to Jodie Whittaker and see how the two of them would have worked together. I could say that though about her and almost anybody from the past too. Would love to see how they match up, but I'll go with that. A good classic stable as stable as a psychotic murderer can get for the Master.
Yeah, it's a relative term. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see. Well, I'd love to see more of the Jacoby Master in general, but I would love to see the Jacoby Master sort of counterpointed with Hartnell. You know, is because Hartnell didn't, you know, obviously interact with the Master at all. But when you think about, you know, the way that you would look at either of those characters, like they're old men, you know, oh, they're sort of doddering, you know, they're not going to cause any harm. But like if you think about, obviously the Doctor being who he is, and the moments that the Hartnell Doctor has to sort of absolutely prove, you know, he's a worthy foe, pitted against again the sort of what would seem to be the sort of quiet evil of the Jacoby Master, but would probably pretty quickly escalate. Like I think that'd be really interesting to see, because again, the closest we got to that is the meddling monk, who's sort of, you know, this almost played for comedy, like, oh, I'm just meddling with time. Look, I have a phonograph and a, you know, whatever. Like I would love to just see something, a more serious interaction with that type of character, and I feel like Jacoby would be the best pair for that.
Yeah, cool. I'd love to see the redeemed Missy teaming up with like the War Doctor, who's like, you know, just out of control, and he's like, you know, picking up machine guns and shooting stuff. She's like, no, we need to have compassion. He just really funny comedy.
Wow. Yeah. Only if the moment, as played by Billie Piper, is both of their companions.
Oh, that's perfect.
Always taunting, like, well, you could press that button, but I don't know. Didn't they tell you I have the weapon has a conscience, so this is what it's going to be like for as long as we travel together.
I did think of one more pairing I kind of like, and that is Sasha Dewan's broken Master interacting with our PTSD Doctor, Christopher Eccleston.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah.
We just in like fist fights all the time.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, insult fights. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would, especially when you think about like, and I realize it sort of goes all topsy-turvy when you realize what happened, what really happened with the Time War and all these things, but like with what Eccleston's doctor think has happened, and then whatever the Master's role would have been in that, and how he would have reacted to any incarnation of the Master. Yeah, that would have been interesting to see, because he was obviously pretty broken as a person coming out of the Time War. So yeah, I like that.
Can I change my answer to Eric
Sure.
Roberts and Peter Cushing?
I wish you would change your answer to that.
Through the magic of deep fake technology, someone can put that together
perfect.
for us. So
They already have the template for Peter Cushing, so
that's
you know.
right.
That's true. They've already done it.
Yeah.
Let's make that happen.
But will Peter Cushing be wearing slippers?
Yeah, Peter Cushing's just reading like the Eagle comic or whatever, and the Master's like sliding down the banister, going, "I was dressed for the occasion." He's like,
Yes,
man.
but then who's going to sit on the soft centers? Is it going to be the Master, or is it still going to be Cushing? You know, who's going to? Well, I guess it was Ian that did that, wasn't it? Nothing. Well, anyway.
Don't sit on them. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the soft center. Yeah. It's a reference to Doctor Who and the Daleks, Bill.
It's a movie. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's not really canon, so yeah.
They're called candies.
Yeah.
Thanks, we have another question in the chat. What master pairings would you like to see?
Oh.
John Sim almost started to go there, and I'm glad we didn't continue that conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, Sim and Missy.
Yeah. I think the Master would totally go there with any of his incarnations.
I think he would.
Yeah.
And then whichever one was more evil in the moment would kill the one that he no longer needed once he was done.
That's right. Yes.
I feel like I'd like to see something with either or Pratt or Beavers, the Decayed Master, with really any of them, like with Delgado to be like, this is what you're going to become, or with any futures we know at least, be like, ugh, this is what you were, and you're not getting any better. You just don't look as gross anymore. So I'd like to see something there.
Yeah, I love the idea that like the Master has a companion, but it's just his like decayed burnt self. He's like, no, this is my friend.
Right. Yeah, he's trying to put some mask over his old decayed self, and it's just not working.
Try this moisturizer.
I feel like similar to the Ronnie, Ainley's Master would probably annoy any other version of the Master that you put him with. But I'd like to see Ainley and Missy together. It'd be interesting.
Oh, she'd kill him. Like literally kill him immediately.
He would appear in the first 5 seconds. Yeah. Oh, we're done.
Yeah. She'd be like, oh, and I bet you still have that stupid shrinking gun, don't you? No, I don't do that anymore. Well, I mean, I will again as Dewan, but
I was happy to see the tissue compression eliminator come back. I will admit.
I was too. To be fair, I was too.
There was some squeeing going on.
It was the nostalgia there. Like that's really, especially the whole Matchbox thing was very reminiscent of the Lunchbox and Terror of the Auton. So I like that.
Yeah, I want to see the Beavers and Pratt Masters join up and go on adventures together and just like get in the grandfather class.
They both just sit very quietly. They don't walk around. They have walking TARDISes, like matching walking TARDISes. And there's a lot of tea sipping, quiet, low voiced laughing. I would be there for that. Big Finish.
I mean, they make fun of each other's features. The one's going like this all the time. The other go,
Yes. Yeah, they're a comedy duo. Yes, I love it.
I love that if you're Peter Pratt and you have access to like the greatest VR machine in the world, and you don't bother to go in it and make yourself some handsome young dude, and you're just like, oh, I'll send the other guy in. Like,
yeah. And they could like change out like when they're sitting in the keeper's chair, like, oh, can you tell which one I am? Am I Pratt or am I Beaver? Yeah. I love it. Yes. Bill, write it. Big Finish, produce it. I'll be a guest star.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for contributing. And if you're watching this, thank you again for joining us. And please like this video, subscribe to our page. Console Room is happening virtually January 15th through January 17th. Find out all the things that are happening by visiting the website, www.console-room.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Thanks.